still, I think we got a sense of over 20 minutes, a little over 20 minutes of a film produced by Sharon, written and directed by Graham, crewed by a number of graduate students, former students of DBS, many of them, also former students of Filmbase. Obviously acknowledge the significance of the film. It's IFTA nominated. It's an extraordinary achievement for a film which is made by graduate students to be swimming in the same pool as films made by industry standard and the best of Irish industry standard filmmakers. It is important to stress, and particularly in a context like this, where we're doing SHOWREAL and the Irish Screen Studies Seminar, to think about students. Our big push has, for many years with Voices on Film, has been for practice to be recognised as research and for research to speak to practice. And I think we're beginning to find a situation where that conversation is starting to happen. A film like Lily is a perfect example of that. This film was originally conceived as the creative media project of an MA in creative media practice. That's where the script came from originally. Graham is in the process of doing that. And it kind of reversed backwards into Filmbase, into the master's program. Let's talk about Lily first.
Sure. How
many international festivals so far?
Officially 16, I think, and yet to be announced about 10. So yeah, we've a lot of laurels on the poster.
It's been seen at the Savannah Film Festival in
that was probably one of the biggest
States,
festivals
one of the biggest, Santa Fe.
Mm-hmm.
It premiered at the Galway Film Fleadh. It was shown at Cork at the film festival in November. It won Best Short at the ADIF, the recent ADIF.
At ADIF, at Galway and at Santa Fe.
Okay.
Yeah. I did my master's here in Filmbase and I finished up in 2014, so the following year Filmbase asked me to come back in and work on a project which is now Lily. So they asked me to come on board as a kind of production manager / producer role. I think I had about 10 days prep on Lily, it's very short for any film, but especially for a film where, some of the students hadn't even been on a film set before, that's a hard thing to work with. And we had a very, very tiny amount of money. We made the film with €3,000. It was a 24-page script that we had, I think officially 3 days, but maybe a sneaky 4 days to shoot. So it was a lot to put together. But everyone was really great. All the people who came in from the industry were really excited about the project. And, as probably most of you guys know, it's hard when you start off in the industry to kind of learn the industry standard and learn the practices and get all, even set etiquette and things like this. So it was a huge opportunity for the students, but also everyone, from the industry was recognised that that's a hard thing to do, and we're happy to kind of pass on the knowledge.
Lily is certainly the first student film ever to get close to an IFTA nomination. I've no doubt that some things like that will happen in the future. Tell us about other films that you've been involved in. You produced Poison Pen.
Correct.
As your master's project, effectively, when you did the MA in digital feature film production here at Filmbase. Maybe you'd like to tell the audience a little about that journey.
Poison Pen. Poison Pen was a feature film, and as a student, producing a feature film is nuts. It's absolutely crazy to think that students could go out and make a feature film, but we did. We launched an Indiegogo campaign to fund the film, so in 30 days we raised €25,900 that we earned every cent of. The script for Poison Pen was absolutely excellent. It was written by Owen Colfer, who you probably recognise from the Artemis Fowl series, which is very popular, and he had written the script, I think 10 or 15 years?
10, 12 years previously, yeah.
It was originally set in New York. We brought it back to London, which we thought was a bit more feasible than New York, but still for a student film was a little bit crazy. We got a really great cast attached to it. Evie McGinnity and Lachlan O'Marn star as the leading roles, and we had Paul Ronan in Poison Pen, and we had Lauren Canny, Aaron Heffernan, Ryan O'Shaughnessy, and a whole bunch of others who were for them to be doing a student film was really great, and nobody got paid on this, actors, crew. We opened the Chicago Irish Film Festival, it opened the Rome International Film Festival, It played in London, it played in a bunch of other places in the States. It won Best Film at the OJA Film Festival in LA. And then it went on to do some cool things, like it played on Oman Air in the Middle East for like a whole month, where it was very popular. It had a TV screening, this time last year actually, Easter, on UTV Ireland, and played again on New Year's Eve, which is 2 quite big slots for a student film. And it's also available on Amazon Prime now.
Where are you going next with Lily?
So yeah, we have a lot of festival announcements coming up for Lily. We premiered at the Galway Film Festival, as we mentioned. So Galway, if you make an Irish film, shorter feature, Galway is the place that you want to screen it, because it gets a huge audience, particularly within the film industry. We've about 10 more festivals to announce in places like the UK, Canada, the US, India, and a whole bunch more. And then it is screening this Monday, the 17th of April, on RT as part of Short Screen, and it will be available on RT Player. We have also sold it to Virgin Airlines, so it's going to play there, I think started maybe in a month or so. It's been sold to an Italian broadcaster, which I don't know the name of, and they'll screen it on Italian TV for a whole year. And it's also going to be available, not for a while, but eventually on a video-on-demand platform in libraries, which is kind of a new scheme that they're doing. So there's lots happening for the film. And 2 or 3 of the films that I worked on last year should be coming out shortly.
How different is it making movies in your experience than in comparison to what you thought was going to be when you started the course? I mean, was it a huge difference when you came in to do a course and trying to make it now?
Yeah, absolutely. Like looking back at how, like Poison Pen in particular, like looking back on how we did that now, it was just crazy. But we didn't know any better at the time, so we just kind of went and we did it. It is very different. I mean, it's a lot of hard work, but I think the important thing, particularly if you're making a student film, is to never think you're making a student film. Like as you probably remember with Poison Pen, like we never sold that as a student project. We sold that, you have to think big and you have to sell it big. And I think that's why Poison Pen and Lily both kind of came out as well as they did.
Recently, the Film Board and BAI commissioned this study of film training and screen training in Ireland. There was one in Galway that I attended, and it seemed to me, one of the complaints frequently coming from the industry was that people were coming out of training out of colleges and universities without knowing how to behave on a set, and I mean, what I would say is that's an unrealistic expectation. But I think something like this is great for bridging that gap, because you can't learn that in college or anywhere else.
No, but you can start learning about it.
No,
you can know that it's there,
sure.
and you can be introduced to it. And I think
Yeah.
for students who are heading towards the practical, that's absolutely necessary.
No, absolutely.
Also
but I think
at
that
ML.
range is fantastic to have that mentorship. It's fantastic to actually bring people from the educational environment to the work environment.
And like I said, the industry is very generous, and particularly in Galway. The connections that there are between you guys at the Houston School and Miriam and Gar and everybody at the Galway Film Festival, very important, and particularly so for students and, shall we say, post-student filmmakers.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Thank you very much, Sharon.
So can you talk us through firstly the process, the technical process that you engage with, and then talk us through the ideas that are behind it?
So for that piece, some of it is constructed and some of it is kind of like recorded in a sense where for the sculptures I used a technique called photogrammetry, where you take maybe like 100 photos of an object and you feed it into a computer program that analyzes those photos.
So they're real sculptures to begin with that
Yeah.
you've reconfigured.
Yeah, and that's the Crawford Canova sculpture collection down in Cork. Yeah.
Right.
The computer program converts them into 3D models, and then you import them into the virtual environment, and that gallery space and what kind of proceeds after that is all kind of constructed. So there's certain things which are real and attempt to be kind of like a little bit synthetic, and there are other things that are kind of, there's a lot of illusion going on, you know.
Right.
And then to actually make the video piece, you have this constructed space which is like, you know, it's on a computer screen, and you connect a camera to that line, and you move the line all through the space, and you tell it.
Now, are you doing this on a mouse, or are you doing it with a pen?
And with the mouse. So basically, what I do is take a kind of a vertical look at this kind of like this gallery space that I've constructed, and I draw a line like this. And obviously I tell it to go around the sculptures in whichever way I want, and then I go at a different angle and I tell it to go up or down or all those things. So it's a very kind of, it's very physical kind of camera track that both the focal point and the camera are constantly kind of like moving, you know. There's no like it doesn't stop at any point.
Right. And when you were studying this, you know, down in Crawford, is that what your tutors and your lecturers took you through, the technical aspects of how to render and how to program it? Was that the case?
No. So when I graduated, like it was actually during setting up my degree show, that's when I first learned how to do a plug, like, you know, like wire a plug. Like, so I didn't really have many skills. So it was just over a year ago I started learning kind of animation. So I basically just like sat down.
So that is the fruit of 1 year's self-tutoring.
Yeah, YouTube is a great thing.
Folks, what are we waiting for? Why don't we all get involved in that? Okay, so beyond that, we saw a little bit of greens. I wouldn't call it green screen, but you have this lovely green, unaccounted for, unarticulated space.
Yeah.
Why did you leave that in? Because I think to the untrained or untutored eye, you may say to yourself, technical problem here, I'm looking at an incomplete work. Is that part of your decision?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like I think like within filmmaking, the green screen is always kind of seen as like the incomplete space. You know, it's where things are yet to be. You know.
Yeah.
So I was quite interested in this idea of like the facade, the construction, the space that is like it looks like it's like solid. You know, like the kind of architraves and like all the like kind of architectural details, they look solid, but it's just this kind of facade, you know. And like within my work, I'm very interested in perception, how the mind kind of like perceives our like environment around us,
right.
And how we are limited by our senses, and we can only experience like light at a particular wavelength and whatnot. So like there's a lot of kind of like, in a sense, like illusion going on where your brain is interpreting information, and it's very kind of like rooted in technology and now, but now in a few years, you know.
Okay, so the present in the future.
Yeah.
Okay, I've mentioned virtual reality there, which brings me to Elaine's work. Barney, could we just Conor, could you lower the lights, please, and just go on to the next 3 stills? We have 3 stills of Elaine's work. This is from your work, your award-winning work, The Weight of Water.
That's right, and sorry there's no video because it's actually not a movie file, it's an app. It's a computer app, so the extension is EXE and it's not .mov, so that already kind of brings us into new territory about how we're going to view movies in the future. They're not necessarily going to be, they're going to be in real time perhaps, so they won't run sort of pre-rendered, they'll run in real time. So there's lots of kind of interesting things coming up in the future about the kind of future of this particular kind of filmmaking technology.
You said it's incomplete. It feels of a piece, it feels complete. You know, it's 3D, you can actually walk around inside your ideas, right? Which I think is very, very important for anybody who's going to, any artist. They've got to not just present the work, they've got to really, really think about it, because I think that's what makes it last. You know? 2 aspects that I'd like to focus on before we come to Elaine is, you came around a piece of sculpture and suddenly it changed texture inside. It immediately reminded me of the T1000. All of a sudden, looking at this body, which is very, very is shining and very, very smooth and silvery. Why did you think of that? Where did you think about that idea? And then secondly, that beautiful orb. I don't know whether you noticed this orb floating through the space. Sounding really shallow. What was that about?
So with the orb, like that was, I suppose, I had this video piece kind of in mind, and I wanted there to be a presence, but not a like. Initially, I was thinking a human presence, but I wanted the sole kind of human focus to be on the viewer of the video piece. I didn't want you to look at this video piece and see someone else going around, because that would take you out of it, you know?
Okay, right. So we weren't a third person in there. Okay, so the camera, it's not a camera, but a disembodied vision, and then the orb.
And the orb is like, in a sense, it's like one of those kind of science fiction tropes of like something that is
like a probe?
A probe out there investigating, and it's always going into something that's unknown, and it's kind of collecting information. So you know, it's kind of, it's like a device, it's like a perceptual device for like exploring this, but the orb never does what you want it to do. Like, it always just happens to go out of frame, and it's like, you know, it's never kind of,
I think it reminded me a little bit of, I hope you don't hit me here, Prometheus, really poor film. But do you remember they sent the probes down those to map out the geographical space, and they were scanning stuff like that. And then I think if you're familiar with the very, very first Star Wars picture, when Luke Skywalker, he puts the visor on him, and there's this floating orb. So you're saying but it's interesting, you're saying that it's science fiction related, and it appears to me quite curious, or maybe it's quite obvious, that in modern animation and virtual reality, we are engaging with ideas of the science fiction genre. I mean, as we were talking before, you don't do rom-coms for virtual reality.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's because of the like speculative nature of science fiction. Science fiction is always like looking at like what could be, you know, and it's
possible,
like,
right?
Yeah, it's always kind of like thinking about the future, and it's very kind of like rooted in technology and now, but now in a few years, you know.
Okay, so the present in the future.
Yeah.
Okay.
And sorry, there's no video because it's actually not a movie file, it's an app. It's a computer app, so the extension is EXE and it's not .mov, so that already kind of brings us into new territory about how we're going to view movies in the future. They're not necessarily going to be, they're going to be in real time perhaps, so they won't run sort of pre-rendered, they'll run in real time. So there's lots of kind of interesting things coming up in the future about the kind of future of this particular kind of filmic technology.
We made something which was an animation that went on national television that helped in a health kind of a sphere. So I suppose that's my piece. So using your skills for a variety of different things.
Did the book contract thing, published the book with Manchester University Press in 2006, expecting that my career was then going to catapult me onto lecture tours of the States and I was going to be in demand. It was reviewed by one angry Australian postgrad who I believe was working in the same area and perhaps I beat him to publication, and that now exists. And I've actually come to discover over the last few years that this is amazing, and it's amazing to publish, and I was lucky to study with brilliant people, but it's not enough. I need to be able to, so the things I've been working on the last few years are actually just pushing myself out there using Twitter, even using things like LinkedIn and WordPress. You need to be able to reach an audience, because a book on a shelf isn't necessarily going to engage with enough people anymore. And so this is how my experience now as a contemporary academic, for me it's a kind of a crisis. Almost, even though supposedly my career is dependent upon traditional publication, it's not working for me. It's not, maybe it's within this Irish context, but there's possibly not enough jobs in my field, perhaps I'm overqualified, whatever it is. I'm now not looking at traditional academic publishing. If you look at someone like David Baldwin, he went down the same route because people wouldn't publish his books anymore.
There's a growing sentiment in my field, which is software development, that you don't need a degree, which is true. You can be a programmer without a degree. But that if you do a 6-week course, I did say 6 week, not 6 months, 6-week course, you're as good as a developer who did a degree, which, no matter how intensive, is a very hard thing to justify. And would you let a doctor operate on you with a 6-week course, no matter how intensive? Would you let a scientist analyse a Ebola for you after a 6-week course, you'd probably say, no, I'd rather they were fully qualified.